Welcome to another episode of Behind the Game, the show that gives you a glimpse into the business of sports and introduces you to the people who bring the games that we love so much to life. I'm Patrick Klinger. To my left is Bill Robertson, the only man to ever hit a baseball from home plate at Cretin-Durham Hall Field off the facing of the Nook restaurant in St. Paul.
What an entrance. Thanks, Patrick. Well, our guest today is Miss Kate Mortenson. She serves as the bid director for the NCAA Final Four that's coming to the Twin Cities, but she was named president and CEO of the 2019 Minneapolis Final Four of the local organizing committee. And Kate, welcome to the show.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
I think our viewers would love to hear a little bit about that title that I just chatted about. What really does that entail in overseeing the Final Four in Minneapolis?
So President and CEO of the 2019 Minneapolis Local Organizing Committee entails a very long business card. First of all, that is the nomenclature that the NCAA uses, and for short they call us the MLOC, Minneapolis Local Organizing Committee. But what my role really entails is we're responsible for how to fit the NCAA's Final Four program into a city. So everywhere they go, be it Houston or Dallas or Atlanta or Indianapolis, has a unique footprint, has a unique local dynamic between their community, their business community, their local government. And the role of the local organizing committee is to receive this program and assure the experience for, first of all, the athletes, but also the fans, the visitors, their families, and then the whole host region is an excellent experience.
Great.
You know, Kate, the NCAA Final Four has become a huge event nationally. Even if you're not a basketball fan, you don't pay attention to college basketball throughout the course of the season, just about everybody gets wrapped up in March Madness. So being responsible for the culmination of that and this huge event taking place in Minneapolis, do you feel any pressure to deliver a really successful event?
So if I think about it all at the same time, I feel like I'm looking over the side of a very tall building. But actually, what brings me back down is that we've been working on this project since 2014. So we've had 4 years to get to know the NCAA, to have them know us, and to really very carefully and thoughtfully vision and enact a program to have a great 4 days of experiences in downtown Minneapolis for the players and the fans and the visitors, but also to think about how do we want to utilize the 10 months leading up to the Final Four once we're on the clock, which we now are, and how to take advantage of that opportunity to really create all the forms of impact that we want to see in Minnesota from hosting major events.
I think a lot of people would say, oh, the event's coming, and they think that it just snapped together. But you were involved from the beginning with this event as the bid director, meaning you put the bid for this event for the Twin Cities and the city of Minneapolis in particular. Tell us about that experience and putting a bid like this together. And I'm sure you had so many people whispering to you, here's what you should be putting in, and here's what you should be doing. But in essence, you had to figure out what was right for this bid.
What's exciting about a Super Bowl and a Final Four is that if you roll back the clock, those bids were happening, fairly concurrently, actually. And it's important to note that the bid steering committee was a partnership between the University of Minnesota as a truly excellent host institution delivering championship events for the NCAA. With Meet Minneapolis and Sports Minneapolis, the Convention and Visitor Bureau in downtown Minneapolis, the City of Minneapolis, and you would have had the Stadium Authority also. And really, they were supported by a creative agency developing what the value proposition is, what are the 3 things about our region that would draw these events. Those pieces were very well in place before a bid director came on. So the package had gone in and it had been deemed appropriate for finalist status. So this is in probably June of 2014. And they would have said at that time, wow, the activities really pick up. We're going to need to do a site visit with the NCAA. We're going to need to put a final presentation together. We're going to need to kind of dial this package a little bit tighter into place as best we can 4 years out from the event. We need someone to help with that. And so it wasn't so much, let's do a nationwide search. It was, who does project work like this who's available on Monday? And so I came in, and it was truly unheralded, part-time role to take that value proposition that was already in place and continue to develop a relationship with the NCAA, give them the sense that they could do this event here, that we were ready and ready for that return of the Final Four to Minneapolis. So I think it is really important to say that the expertise around the bid and the details in the bid really come from the bidders, and that would have been the host institution, the stadium authority, and then Minneapolis representing the hospitality community.
Lots of moving pieces.
Lots of moving pieces, but I love moving pieces. I have a background in television news, and the nights and weekends aspect of that period of time was really thrilling, and that sense that you see it starting to come together, and you know that if there are 8 cities vying for 4 Final Fours, you just sense that over time you are locking it down. But we didn't know until they announced on live television that it was going to be Minneapolis in 2019.
Okay, the Twin Cities has a history of hosting some really significant events. Obviously, we just came off the Super Bowl. Prior to that, we had the Ryder Cup. We've had the PGA Championships. We've had just about every major event that you could host, hosted in the Twin Cities. What have you been able to take from those events and learn that you can apply to the Final Four?
Mm-hmm. And I think it really is incredible to consider that 2014 we had the All-Star Game, we had a terrific smaller event, the Senior Games, and we had Ryder Cup in 2016. We have had ESPN X Games, a Super Bowl, a Final Four. We've got another Ryder Cup coming in 2028. I mean, we are really on a roll. And another thing that I would observe is that we've made investments at our airport, in our light rail, and in these world-class facilities and venues, even including Hazeltine for golf, but also US Bank Stadium, a refreshed Target Center. We're building an MLS venue for soccer. And if we build it, guess what? They will come, and they are. And we're finding that the cadence is truly picking up. It's not so much every 10 years. Maybe something really exciting will come to town. It's starting to look like maybe every 1, 2, 3 years we could be hosting a national or global event. So it's a really exciting time. The way that I feel, on the heels of a Super Bowl, and as soon as I got my role, was I began reaching out to the me of the MLB All-Star Game, who was in my role with Super Bowl. Maureen and I had a drink together the week she was named for that position, and that was truly fun and to connect. But we've been convening semi-regularly to understand across all these different events, certain things are fundamental. You need public safety. You need licenses and permits and fees. You need to market to your community. You need public transportation. And it's been a really helpful thing to be able to reach out and across different events and get to know my counterparts so that we can start thinking strategically about, how do we do this again and again and assure the excellence that we all expect.
At the end of the day, fans will say, all that stuff is going to be great with the Final Four coming to Minneapolis. How do I get tickets? And in your mind, are you expecting a complete sellout for the event?
So the Final Four it's one of the toughest tickets to obtain in all of sports. That is true. And that will be true in US Bank Stadium. The building will be a sellout for sure. And so it is not too soon for people who know they want to be in US Bank Stadium for our first Final Four in 18 years and the first ever to be held in that iconic venue. But there are a couple ways to get tickets. And so right now through, there's probably until about mid-May, there is a random selection process. And it's similar, some folks might know from Ryder Cup, where you can put your credit card down and say, I want to buy between 1 and 4 tickets. And here's a tip. If you pick an odd number, 1 or 3, you're more likely to be randomly selected, because this is how they assure that they fill the upper deck of US Bank Stadium. So remember, it's going to be a certain kind of experience from up there. You're going to be in the building, and that's exciting. But if it's important for you to be mid-bowl or lower bowl, you probably don't want to go with the random selection. But about half of the people who apply are selected. So that's a great entry point, and for about $210, You're there for all 3 games. 1 ticket, all 3 games.
The event's being hosted in US Bank Stadium. First time a big-time basketball event is being held in that venue. What are some of the challenges of hosting the Final Four in US Bank Stadium? I know that drapes, for instance, are a topic of conversation right now.
Yep. And it is a hugely complex, massive undertaking to create inside a venue built for one purpose, an entirely different experience. So you're going to start by building a court elevated 30 inches off the ground between the 35-yard lines, right down on top of the football turf. And then you're going to install, beginning from the very edge of that court, graded seating that creates kind of a bowl experience as it gradually rises up to meet seats that are already there. And in doing so, you're going to completely take out some of those turf level access points for football, and they get repurposed for something else. You also have to think about, in doing that, complex ingress and egress to things like restrooms, food and beverage, something those of us who are in the building, and we hope everybody will come because there are ways to have tickets and we should all be there if we can be there. But remember, it's a building that was built for 65,000 people to watch a football game, and now we're going to put more than 70,000 people in that building to watch on Saturday of Final Four weekend 2 basketball games. So when you think about things like, well, I'm hungry again, and what it takes to make sure the building has everything that it needs, it's very complex. To the point about the lighting conditions, back to the bid specifications, it was known and very clear to the bid steering committee that they would have to provide equal playing conditions for the athletes. Some of them are in the shoot-arounds and practices. If it's 2 o'clock, they need the same experience as they have at 5 o'clock. And it's not like outdoor tennis when you're taking a shot in the Final Four and okay, the sun's in my eyes this time, hey, the other guy will get it next time. No, everybody has to have the same experience on the court, same experience in the locker room, same experience in the practice venue. And so that does require that the venue look at creating that equal lighting condition.
Duke University won in 1991 at the Metrodome. Then they won again in 2001. I'm sure that Coach Krzyzewski is thinking about 2019, saying we'd like to come back and capture the title again for Duke. But it's in saying that, have you gone back to take a look a bit about the history of the Final Four at the Metrodome? Obviously a much different venue than US Bank Stadium, to look at what they did, not only from the bids, but some of the events and all that, and from those experiences, taking that and catapulting it into 2019.
So 1957, Williams Arena, right? So that's really dialing the clock back. But we've had 2 Final Fours in the Metrodome, and the most recent one in 2001, and they were still down at one end of the field. And so in this intervening 18 years, honestly, it's a whole new event. And honestly, too, we are a whole new city and region. And so one of the things that the local organizing committee is tasked with doing is marrying those 2 things up to create a great 2019 Final Four and earn a future opportunity. Because now that we have the venue where this place, where this event takes place, and they're always in domed stadiums, so there's only about 10 of those around the entire country. And we have the venue right in a dynamic downtown, which is the experience that every Final Four visitor wants to have. We are really in the catbird seat to see a Final Four return every 7 to 9 years. So think about that. We need to do this event in a way that not only does the NCAA want to return, the fans want to return, and our community wants that event back too, because it's not going to be such a long time in the future that that people can't remember if it was a good or a bad experience. So we certainly did, during the bid, visit with some of the folks who were ambassadors and co-creators of that Final Four. But it is such a different. All the people are different. The bid specifications are different. That it's really a whiteboard moment for us to think about what does a Final Four look like in 2019 terms.
With the Super Bowl, Kate, there were so many opportunities for people in the Twin Cities or visitors to participate around the Super Bowl, even if they didn't have a ticket to the game. Does the Final Four provide some of those same sort of opportunities that even if you can't get into US Bank Stadium for those 3 games, that you can still enjoy the festivities?
Absolutely, they do. In fact, it's very important to the NCAA when you think about these are student athletes. This is amateur sports. It's college athletics, and sometimes we forget because it is so exciting and it is such a national and increasingly global event. We forget that the commitment is really to a high degree of inclusivity, and especially in the host region. And so that's another part of our task, is to make sure that people know no ticket, no problem. Starting with Friday of Final Four weekend, which will be April 5th, 2019, the US Bank Stadium will be entirely open and free to the public. You won't need a ticket. You can walk right in the door and you can fill in that bowl right down to the court as close as you can get and watch an all-star game of the best junior and senior players from around the country. You'll see band and cheer. You'll see them practicing. You'll see a shoot-around of actually the 4 teams. You will be as close from me to you with coach whoever it may be, giving some instruction to his team or saying hello to the band. This is a really important thing for our region in particular. Minnesotans expect that they're going to have some access to these large events that are coming in, and so it's definitely something we want people to know. There are free activities for youth Final Four weekend. They do a basketball parade for over 3,000 youth, like dribbling down Nicollet Mall, then into the Fan Festival. There are free music events too. So our event from beginning to end is for everybody.
You know, volunteerism has been such a unique part of all these big events that have come through Minnesota and the Twin Cities. Tell us a little bit about the opportunities presented to our viewers with volunteerism and how that will go and what they can get involved in if they want to work the events as a volunteer.
So Super Bowl needed 10,000 volunteers. And I thought, wow, that's going to be pretty daunting. 10,000 volunteers, and it's over 10 whole days at the coldest part of the year. Like, how's that going to come together? Next thing you know, they had 30,000 people sign up for 10,000 volunteer opportunities. And this says a lot about who we are as a state of Minnesota. We are, I think, number 1 in the country for volunteerism, and our cities are in the top 3. So people want to come and be a part of welcoming the larger world. Our event will need 3,500 or so volunteers over the course of the 4 days, and we have a website now, which is final4minneapolis.com, and people can go there and click a tab and let us know of their interest to volunteer. We actually roll out the program a little later because some of the elements tend to fall behind a little bit if we do it too soon. But we need and want folks who want to come and be a part of this event to sign on with us, for sure.
The Twin Cities has a great corporate community, right? And a lot of the companies are accustomed to spending on sports. And that's part of the reason why we've been so successful in getting major events to come to the Twin Cities. What kind of corporate support is required locally for the Final Four?
So our community, we just talked about our people. We had 3 value propositions in the selling of this event. We said we're easy to get to and easy to get around. Think of that world-class airport and 145 non-stops in and out. When you have to move 4 teams, that's a really big deal. Our light rail. And then world-class venues, that's US Bank Stadium. And number 3 there is we have a community that delivers. And so we talk about volunteers. Equally, we have a business community that really steps up, leans in, says we understand that this is part of the region's success, and they're willing to participate. And so our activities as a local organizing committee are underwritten by contributions from our large employers in the region. They don't, in the case of the NCAA, receive sponsorship benefits. The NCAA has sponsors who are the representatives of the Blue Disc and all of these activities. But these business leaders in our corporate community, they contribute because they see the value. And our organization is fully a nonprofit, equally committed to how we're enacting impact here. Economic impact, but also with youth and legacy activities and education activities. And so we have been, surprised isn't the right word because our large employers continue to do this, but we have been really wowed by the level of support we see.
You talked a second ago about economic impact, and we talked a little bit off air about this. And I know there were some reports that came out this week about the economic impact for this type of event for the region. Can you speak to that a little bit and what this really means for hotels, restaurants, bars, taxis, Ubers, everything you can think of that out-of-town visitors will get?
Sure. An economic impact is a great reason to do a Final Four, absolutely. At the local organizing committee, we do not feel it is the only reason, so we pay just as much attention to the other forms of impact. We could think of it as a double bottom line. How are we leveraging this fabulous opportunity to celebrate student athletes and amateur sports and college athletics? How do we use that to enact positive change in our community? So we do think about the whole value chain. How do we engage vendors and the small business community? How do we assure youth are at the center of our Final Four? How do we build equity and inclusion and access to as many of the events as we can? But the economic impact, it's a big one. And people look at it, some askance and some with a little bit of a cynical eye, and we understand that. But it's an important accountability step. So we did invest in the same vendor who conducted the study for the Super Bowl so that we could see across 2 events with the pre-event estimate and then the post-event understanding of what did really happen in our tax rolls one year compared to another, having hosted the event. So I didn't know what the number would be. Truly for us, and having visited with other host cities, I was much more focused on having a credible number than having a big number. But actually, I feel like we got both in the methodology. We feel we have a credible estimate of $142 million of incremental benefit to our economy over that 4-day period. And so we feel very, good about that, and we'll be looking carefully all the way through to make sure we're after both those bottom lines.
When Major League Baseball came to the Twin Cities with the All-Star Game, they had a pretty significant community outreach program. NFL did the same thing with the Super Bowl. Does the NCAA do anything similar? Are they looking to make an impact in the community now and even after the event's been held?
They do, and we do. As a local organizing committee as well, and so we put those 2 programs together and link arms to see as much benefit get pushed out across the state of Minnesota as possible through hosting the event. So a couple of the things that we do, we as a local organizing committee have commitments in 3 areas. We first of all want to deliver excellence across all the events. A great experience for the fans. We know what it looks like when you experience excellence. Number 2, we want a future opportunity to host. And number 3, we want to see positive impact here. The positive impact here, together with the NCAA, looks like a legacy restoration project at a Northside rec center in kind of a hotbed area of basketball in our city. That's something that we have already announced at our logo unveil. We are next week going to announce a statewide and year-long legacy initiative around an education area, and we're excited to really put all our heat and light of the sizzle of this event into celebrating kids and especially 3rd grade reading. And then we have some other ways that we're engaging the small business community and using this event to tell the larger world who we are as a state of Minnesota.
Playing in U.S. Bank Stadium, it will be unique. It'll be actually the second opportunity, and I'll get to my question, for basketball to be played in that facility. But I understand that you're working on a basketball showcase event, I believe in the month of December, that would feature the University of Minnesota and an opponent to be named, and also potentially local Minnesota-based schools, MIAC teams, something to that degree, to play like a double header, so you can get a first-hand view of what that looks like and see what you have to tweak and change. Is that coming along, and can you tell us or share a little bit about that?
So a little background on that is, you may recall that the Final Four city would host a regional the year before their Final Four event. In our year of selection, they reached out to us just about a week before they announced that we would host in 2019, and they said, how do you feel if we were to decouple the regional from hosting an event in US Bank Stadium. And we said we'd feel fine about that if we got a Final Four. That would be just great. And I think the idea and the principle is that the player experience in these giant venues is a little bit different when it's a regional than when it's a Final Four event. But we still are committed to doing a test of basketball in the venue for various reasons. We'll maybe do a little partial build of the seat installation, a little check of some of the other various aspects of what does it look and feel like to have basketball in US Bank Stadium. So we're excited about that test run. The University of Minnesota is leading us in terms of exactly when and exactly with who. So I would defer to them on those announcements. But that'll be another way for people to be in US Bank Stadium watching basketball and seeing the Gophers play it 4 months before our Final Four.
Like that'll be a wonderful event leading up to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're coming down to the end of the show, but I wanted to ask you about you personally and the fact that you were a Peace Corps volunteer. I'm not sure how long ago that was, but I'd love to hear about that experience.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I graduated with a degree in broadcast journalism and did work for a time at Hubbard Broadcasting here in Minneapolis-St. Paul region. But right out of college, I did sort of the obvious thing you do with your degree in journalism. I went into the Peace Corps and ended up living on a tiny island in the Indian Ocean off the east coast of Africa. And it's that experience was transformational for me, and it's relevant to me every single day in that I think I put some tools in my toolbox in terms of how to do a lot with a little. And truly, when people come together and you have a vision and you have a common sense of purpose, you can do amazing things. And so here in my role now, when you add actually some resources and this very sophisticated opportunity, it really feels like, launch pad for something special.
Well, I mean, I'm sure the Peace Corps, we only have less than a minute to go. The Peace Corps helped you in leadership skills, but I've done my background work in talking to people about working with you, and they say you're a fabulous leader. So know that from both Patrick and I. And we wish you not only the best of luck with the Final Four coming, but all the things that are leading up to it. I just don't think the viewers out there know how many details and how much work goes into this. So we wish you the very best, Kate Mortenson, and we hope both of us are going to be courtside sitting with you at the game.
April 6th and 8th.
All right, terrific. Kate Mortenson, thank you for joining us on Behind the Game.
Thank you both.
And thank you for joining us as well.